If you're looking for some great dividend stocks or dividend holdings to hold into your portfolio, we're going to be talking about some of those best ones. We're going to be talking about some great dividend ETFs that you can add to your portfolio. We're going to be looking at the dividend yield, the dividend growth rate. We're going to be looking at the performance and even the diversification within each portfolio. And we're going to be looking at seeing what is the 4 best dividend ETFs to buy and hold for the long term. Hey guys, my name is Steve, and I started this channel to help people to save more and invest better. And if you like this content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe so I can continue to create good content to help you guys do better. Now, like I said, in today's video, we're going to be talking about the 4 best dividend ETFs to buy and hold for the long term. Now, you may not be looking at dividends right now. You may be wanting to accumulate wealth, so you're going to be looking at more growth ETFs. But if you're wanting some of those consistent dividends, or you're getting closer to retirement and you're looking for some additional cash flow, this could be the video to watch. And let me know in the comments, what is your favorite dividend ETF? All right, let's get started. Number 1, we're going to be talking about DGRO. So DGRO is the iShares Core Dividend ETF. It has an expense ratio of 0.08%. And with this ETF, it has done pretty well compared to the S&P 500 in performance. And that's great news to you, because if you're looking for a good dividend ETF, you're looking at not only just the yield, the dividend growth rate, you're also looking at maybe the performance and how it diversifies its income. Now, it's like I said, it's got a low expense ratio of 0.08%, so it's only costing you about $8 for every $10,000 invested. And that means low costs matter. And this is a great dividend ETF. Now, if we get into some of the holdings, let's look at what it's kind of breaking up to. Now, right now, this dividend ETF does have about 22% in financials. It's also got close to 18% in tech. And so this is kind of the markets that could go up and down depending on if we're in a bull run or if we have some stability within the markets. Now, it's got a yield of 2.45% with a dividend growth rate of 12.53% over the last 10 years. And it's also got a 4.26% over the last 12 trailing months. Now, those last 12 trailing months is not as good as compared to some other ones on this list, but it's got a pretty good 10-year growth rate. Now, that's news to you, because if you want to continue to grow your dividend over the long term, you want a pretty good long-term dividend growth. And DGRO has been doing this pretty well over the long term, and so it's just a good dividend ETF. Now, it's got financials, and it's also got some tech. So those people that like tech and want some of those performance of tech, this is a great dividend ETF. Now, if the market does have a downturn like it's had in the past, the tech will kind of drop down a lot more, and so those other sectors are hoping to kind of keep it up. All right, now let's break down some of the holdings of DGRO. So DGRO does have about 26% of its holdings in the top 10%. And some of the companies you'll see are like Apple, Broadcom, it's got ExxonMobil, and it's got like JP Morgan. So these are some companies that's part of DGRO. Now, the performance over the long term has been about 10.52% since its inception in June 10th of 2014. And in the last 10 years, or if we look at 10 years starting in January of 2015, we're going to see it has grown about 10.24%. So it's grown about 10% annually over the last 10 to 11 years. So it's pretty good. So DGRO is doing kind of on par with the S&P 500. And so it's just good if you ever look at doing your portfolio, just be conservative at a 7 to 8% real return if you don't want to factor inflation. All right, let's look at our next dividend ETF. And our next dividend ETF is going to be VYM. Now, VYM is the Vanguard High Yield Dividend ETF, and it's got an expense ratio of 0.06%. Now, the dividend yield of VYM is sitting at 3.15%. So it is one of the highest dividend yields on this list, which is good news for you because when we're looking at having a good dividend ETF, we want a good yield as well. So let's take a look at kind of that dividend growth rate with VYM. Now, VYM's dividend growth rate really hasn't been that good over the last 10 years. It's been about 6.82%, with 5 years was about 1.67%. Now, that wasn't pretty good. And so it is not a dividend growth ETF. It looks at more high yield dividend companies. So that's something that it looks at, and that's a little bit different than DGRO, which is continuing to grow its dividend year upon year. Now let's look at some of the breakdowns of this portfolio. Now the top 10% only makes up about 25% of its portfolio. It has about 530 plus and minus holdings as it goes up and down. Financials and tech make up about 36% of this portfolio, and you have companies like Broadcom, Walmart, Procter & Gamble, and these are some of the companies that make up VYM. Now, VYM's performance has been quite poor compared to the other three ETFs on this list. It has performed about 8.8% since DGRO came into play, and about 8.6% since January of 2015. So it's one of the worst performances on this list, but it's also got one of the best yields on this list. All right, let's go on to our next one, which has got good performance. It's got a poor yield, but it's something a little bit different. This is VIG. Now, VIG is the Vanguard Dividend Appreciation ETF. And with this ETF, it's got a lot bit more tech into it and a little bit less yield, because tech companies really don't have that much yield, but Apple, Microsoft do produce a yield, and then you have Broadcom. Like us in Apple, Microsoft, and Broadcom and Visa are some of the top holdings in this ETF. It also has JP Morgan as a part of it as well. Now, it's got an expense ratio of 0.05%, so it's low cost. It's got a dividend yield of 2%. So the dividend yield is actually the worst on this list. But if we look at the dividend growth rate of VIG, it's actually one of the best on this list. The dividend growth rate is 7.54% over the last 10 years and about 9.89% of the last 12 trailing months. So it's doing pretty good in growing that dividend over the last couple years, and so it's got a pretty good dividend growth rate when you compare it to the others on this list. Like I said, if you're looking for performance-wise, VIG is one of the best on here, and DGRO as well. So VIG has got a great performance of 10.17% since DGRO started and 10.07% since January of 2015. Now, tech and finances makes about 47% of this portfolio, with about 31% of its holdings sitting in the top 10%. So it's not as diverse as the others, but if you're looking for more tech and a little bit more finances, VIG could be that ETF that you could buy and hold forever. It is a great ETF that you can buy and hold forever with low cost, a great dividend growth rate, and some good performance. All right, let's go on to our last dividend ETF. And our last dividend ETF on this list is going to be SCHD. Now, SCHD is the Charles Schwab US Equity Dividend ETF, and it's got an expense ratio of 0.06%. Now, since its reconstitution, it has added more energy and less finances within the portfolio, so it's going to have a little bit different portfolio. With this, it's got a yield of about 4.12% for the last 12 trailing months, and it's got a dividend growth rate of about 11.30% over the last 10 years. Now, the dividend growth rate over the last 12 trailing months is about a little bit over 16%, which is great when you're looking at having a dividend to continue to grow its yield. Now, you may be thinking, this has got a great dividend yield, but what about the performance? Now, let's take a look at that performance to see if it compares to DGRO and VYM. Now, it's performed pretty well since DGRO came in June 10th of 2014. SCHD has performed about 10.16%. Now, if we look at January of 2015, it has performed about 10.02%. So it has the third, either worst or best performance on this list, but it's also got the best yield. So if we're looking at something that's comparable to DGRO, right now it's got the best performance. And SCHD has got the best yield. Now, the dividend growth rate is one of the best. With the holdings, you have energy and consumer staples making up about 40% of the holdings. And you have the top 10 holdings making about 41% of the 103 holdings. And so, if you're looking for some stable companies in this kind of market, you've got energy, you got consumer staples kind of like Walmart, you got Exxon, you got ConocoPhillips, you got Chevron. Some of these companies are part of this ETF. You got AbbVie that's doing really well as well. So these are some companies that are part of it, and this is something that brings stability. Now, I like SCHD as a great dividend ETF to add to my portfolio. And if you're looking for some other great dividend ETFs, then you've got DGRO, VYM, and VIG. Now, I did a video of this a couple weeks ago of ranking some of the best to the worst dividend ETFs, and these 4 dividend ETFs made my top 4 list. And that's why I'm talking to you guys about it today. These are 4 of the best dividend ETFs that you can buy and hold. Each one has its own kind of differences. You can have more tech with VIG or DGRO. You can have more yield with VYM or SCHD. If you want kind of a combination of both, I like SCHD. Now, that is up to you what you would like. Let me know in the comments, what is your favorite dividend ETF? And I hope to see you guys later, and I'll let you guys have a link up here of the best and worst dividend ETFs to buy and hold. All right, until next time, let's see you.